Hello again, everybody. The next car that I'm going to tell you about is kind of an added part of history here. Since we got this car in about 8 months ago, we've spent an extensive amount of time doing a lot of research. Now, anytime you talk about early 1964 Mustangs, you're in uncharted waters because there isn't a whole lot known about the early Mustangs. I'm talking about the first ones built when the factory opened up. We know enough today that we can give you a complete story because we've done our homework, and I'm making a supplement to the original video that I did do because we have discovered some things about Old Pony, the one that I'm standing next to, and it's very exciting, and we have some more very exciting news to announce to you. But let me start out with telling you a little bit of history of the Mustang. In 1964, the first day of production for the general public was March 9th. This car that I'm standing next to was the first Mustang convertible produced the first day for the general public to be able to buy. Now, let's go back a little bit. On March 5th, when the factory opened up, they produced 185 pre-production vehicles. These were not vehicles that were produced to be sold to the public. These were units that were either sent to Ford racing affiliates, used maybe for experimental models, for testing. They were all prototype pre-production cars. They were not cars that were built to be sold to the general public. History is firm on the fact that March 9th, when the plant opened, that was for production of the Mustangs that were to be sold to the general public. That makes this car extremely rare because it is the first convertible produced on the first day of production. Now, I want to back up a little bit and talk a little bit about the pre-production cars, and I'm going to unveil and tell you about some very important things that we found out about this car, and we're helping all of the Mustangs and Mustang collectors in the world by some of this information that we're discovering, because in 29 years that I've been in business, I've done a lot of research, and a lot of the cars that I've dealt with, I've sold a lot of rare cars, but I now know that I have in our possession here that ClassicMuscleCars.com now owns is one of the rarest of all Mustangs, period, and we're going to tell you why. But let's go back to some of the pre-production vehicles, and let me talk a little bit about those. Today, in 2007, there is 8 pre-production vehicles that are known to be left and exist. Let me tell you what those are and tell you a little bit about them. Number 1 is in the Henry Ford Museum. That's the convertible that everybody knows about. That's the first convertible built. But that was a pre-production vehicle. It was not built with the intention to be sold to the public. That is now at and in the Henry Ford Museum where it's on public display. Number 6 has been discovered. It was a shell in a junkyard in Georgia. It has been discovered. That car was a convertible, but that was one of the cars that was sent to the World's Fair. In 1964, Ford displayed their convertibles in a display at the 1964 World's Fair with Disney at that time, and it was a really cool ride that they had. But you could go in and actually get in a convertible and go down a track, and you would see it like the history of the world, all the way into prehistoric, all the way into future times. So that's what they used the cars for. So there was 12 of those that were built, pre-production, sent to the World's Fair, and those were used for rides where people actually got into the car with the top down and they drove down the track, the conveyor belt. Now, there's only, like I said, number 6 is the only one that is left from the World's Fair ones, and that is a shell that was found in a junkyard in Georgia. Number 37 and number 78, that is known today, known to be out there and exist, are coupes. Number 122 is a convertible that's known to still exist. Number 125 is a coupe. These are pre-production cars. They were not produced for the general public. And number 148. Now, number 148 is pretty unique. Number 148 is a fastback. Number 148 also had a K-code motor in it, which they put in some of the early 64 cars, the coupes. But number 148 is a fastback. And if you know your Mustangs, in 1964, they didn't produce it. Even though they were titled as the 65, 64s were the first ones, they had no fastbacks until the actual production year of 1965 when they came out with the first fastbacks. So, this fastback was had a K engine in it, K code 389 hypo, and it was built for Henry Ford II. Okay? That is still known to exist today. Now, these are all March 5th production cars. The one I'm standing next to is March 9th. This is the first day the factory opened its doors to produce the cars for the general public. Now, I want to make a special announcement here today. With all of this research that we have done, and all the stones that we turn over looking for information, looking for cars, searching and doing all of our homework, which when you have a car of this caliber, you have to do a lot of homework. You have to do a lot of research. A lot of it's already been done for us because this car has a pedigree second to none in the world. This car spent 2 tours in the Towle Ford Museum in Sacramento. It has a ton of documentation. It has a pedigree. It has a rich history. And I'm going to get back to this car, but I want to go back to talking about pre-production cars March 5th. We now are making it publicly known that we have acquired, and it's never been known till this point, till this day that I'm making this announcement, number 93. Number 93, built March 5th, pre-production car, was a convertible. This car has not been known. No one has known about it. We found it. We are bringing it here. It will be in our collection here at ClassicMusclecars.com, and as we do more research about that particular car, we're going to let you know. So, let's move up to this car. This car was the first convertible produced, the first day of production for sale to the general public. That is a fact. We have the proof. Okay? I will talk a little bit about this. This is a little known guy that not too many people know about. This was produced, or put out, I should say, published in 1994. It's since out of print. But this was one of the first publications by 2 authors of Jim Smart and Jim Haskell that made the first historical attempt to really get deep into the first productions of the 1964 Mustangs, to really tell the story and find what's left and do a tremendous amount of research. We used this book, which came with us with this particular car from the other owner, prior owner, who owned it for about 27 years, and we used this in our research, but there's other avenues that we went to. The internet wasn't around as being used that much. There wasn't a lot on the internet in '94, so this was a very important publication when it first came out. Now there's been a few things that we've added that wasn't in this book from our research that we do know. So what we have found out with this car, which is very exciting, and I'm proud to announce it here for the first time on video. Along with this car being the first convertible produced, the first day of production sold to the general public, this is and was the first Mustang sold. Now that's huge. Ford had a great promo campaign that started in early April. The cars were not allowed to be sold until the first day that they were available for sale, which was April 17th. On April 16th, 9:30 Eastern Time, on all 3 major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, a 1-minute commercial aired to promote the Ford Mustang that you could go out tomorrow morning on the 17th and buy these cars. That was such a huge success, that promotion, that the first day the dealerships were packed all day long with people. Ford sold over 22,000 cars the first day of production. That's huge. That has a record that has stood since April 17th of 1964. No other car manufacturer has ever been able to duplicate that, nor I don't think in the future it's going to happen. It was huge. So they set a record that still today, in 2007 and going into 2008, has never been broken. Now, what we do know about this car, that hours before that promotional commercial came out on all three networks, this car was in the owner's possession, in their hands. We have documentation. The original salesman was involved in some of this documentation, but we also have the original invoice. This car was sold and delivered on the 16th, hours before the historical 60-second commercial came out to tell the public, tomorrow you can go finally get this dream car. You can finally get a piece of the American dream, this new, most sought after 64 Mustang. So this is the first Mustang convertible produced, the first day of production on the assembly line, and it is now known that this is the first Mustang sold, period. This is a very, very historical car. Now, this video that I'm doing now is being added to the original first video that we did on this car when we first got it at our dealership at ClassicMuscleCars.com. Jeremy went around the car, you'll be able to see it, and I talked about it and I showed some of the documentation. But now, after all of these months later, we've done a tremendous amount of research and we have found out some of the real heart and soul history of the 1964 Mustang early production cars. The next car that you're viewing on ClassicMuscleCars.com is a new, exciting arrival. This is a historical day for ClassicMuscleCars.com because we have an historical car for you to view. This car, folks, is the first Mustang convertible built on the assembly line. It is a historical car of huge importance, and we have so much documentation for this car, it's unbelievable. But first, let me tell you, folks, in the years past, I've sold a lot of really rare cars. And I will say, when we got this car in today, and I viewed all the documentation for it firsthand, it just blew me away. I've had a lot of documented cars, and I've never had a car with so much documentation. This car is a historical important car, not only for the collector car industry, but it is a historical car in terms of the importance for Ford Motor Company. Now, I have a letter in this documentation that's dated January 16th of 2007. It's from William Clay Ford, to the owner of this car that we got this car from. Now, let me read the last paragraph of this letter. It says, as a Mustang enthusiast, you help preserve the heritage built by Ford Motor Company, and it gives me personal satisfaction to know that you are the proud owner of this historic automobile. Sincerely, William Clay Ford. Now, in the early 90s, I brokered another car of historical importance. That was a 1968 Z28 Camaro convertible, the only one built. But now that car doesn't have the same kind of impact or importance that this car does. And I'm not knocking the Z28 because I'm a Chevy man, and I will be till the day I die. But to Fords, to Mustang, this car is it. This is the first car produced on the assembly line, the first day of production for the Mustang convertible, for the Mustang hardtops, for all Mustangs that has become such a legend for all of us who have had Mustangs and owned Mustangs, and what it means to the automotive industry. That's why this car was featured in the Tao Museum for, I guess it was probably 2 times it was there for a period of about 6 to 8 years total time. And all of the history that goes along with this car, because of the fact that it was the first car produced, the first Mustang convertible on the assembly line. Now, give Randy a call. We have so much information on this car. I would be out here for the next 2 days trying to do a video on it. He can talk to you about this. He can show you more of this information that's here. It is unbelievable, folks. It is some of the best documentation I've ever seen. It's got some of the greatest history, and I'm very, very proud to be involved in bringing this car to you here to ClassicMuscleCars.com because of the historical importance of what this car means to not just our company, but to all car collectors and car enthusiasts, muscle car enthusiasts all over the world. This is number one. It doesn't get much better than that. Only available at ClassicMuscleCars.com.
Wow, this car's got an incredible pedigree, doesn't it? The first one off the assembly line. Let's walk around. The wire-style wheels with the spinners, and that thing there is a magnetic cover for the event area. Outstanding. Blue convertible top. Up under the hood, 260 cubic inch engine with a generator. Power steering, manual brakes, heater delete. Let's take a look on the inside. Right here we have the rally pack gauges, and the clock is working. We're looking at 56,543 on the odometer. So you have a tach there, clock, temperature gauge, gas gauge. And this little spot right here next to the ashtray is where the heater controls would have been if it ever had a heater. This is, as I said earlier, heater delete. And this radio here is not the original radio that came with it. I'm not sure if it's aftermarket or a regular Ford radio, but the original radio that came with the car, it does go along with it, the original AM radio. And we can't miss the blue fuzzy dice. Just in beautiful, beautiful condition. One of a kind. The only one. First off the assembly line. From ClassicMuscleCars.com.